2025, the tax reform bills were referred to the House Committee on Finance for passage into law following the transmission to the National Assembly on 3rd October 2024 by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The House Committee on Finance thereafter proceeded on a week-long retreat for a thorough review of the bills and laid same on the 18th of March 2025. However, due to differences in the review outcome of both chambers of the National Assembly, a harmonization conference committee was constituted with the responsibility to ensure a final review of the bills and harmonize any differences for onward transmission to the President for his assent. The harmonization committee conference took place Thursday 22nd and Friday 23rd May 2025. Following exhaustive deliberations, the differences in the bills were unanimously resolved, and the chambers are therefore aligned on a single version of all four distinct bills considered during the conference.
I must commend the effort of the National Assembly to disagree and agree up to this point, because I can assure you this is the last journey on this bill. From now, we are progressing forward.
It is indeed a new dawn for tax administration in Nigeria. The Taiwo Oyedele Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform was set up on the 7th of July 2023 by the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. The committee has a broad mandate which is divided into three pillars: fiscal governance, revenue transformation or tax reform, and growth facilitation. The committee moved swiftly into action and submitted its report on the 24th of October 2023. After thorough deliberation, the Federal Executive Council forwarded 4 tax bills to the National Assembly. As expected in any vibrant political and economic community, the tax reform bills generated heated debate, support and opposition across the polity. In keeping with its procedure, the National Assembly invited the public to public hearings on the 4 tax reform bills as a prelude to other steps that would be taken before the bills can be passed into law. The Red Chamber, the Senate, held its own public hearing from Monday, February 24th to Tuesday, February 25th, while the Green Chamber, the House of Representatives, held its 3-day hearing from Wednesday, February 26th to Friday, February 28th, 2025. Following the public hearings by both chambers of the National Assembly, the House of Representatives followed up with its internal retreat, which involved consultation with stakeholders and experts from Tuesday the 11th to Thursday the 13th of March 2025. After much deliberation, the Committee of the Whole House passed all the clauses, and the 4 tax reform bills passed 3rd reading. Just as it was done at the House of Representatives, the Senate held its plenary from Wednesday the 7th to Thursday the 8th of May 2025, and the 4 tax reform bills passed 3rd reading. A conference committee was set up to harmonize the different versions of the 4 tax reform bills passed by both houses, which will be followed by transmission to Mr. President for assent. In a swift move that has gladdened their hearts, the 2 chambers of the National Assembly, on Wednesday the 28th day of May 2025, considered and passed the report of the conference committee. Come along as we share with you the decisions of both houses. Here is what transpired at the Red Chamber.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the second order of the day is the consideration and adoption of the Conference Committee report on the Tax Reform Bills 2025 as listed on the order paper. Distinguished senators will recall that the Senate and the House of Representatives passed different versions of the Tax Reform Bills 2025. The Conference Committee of both houses had met and harmonized the differences in accordance with Senate Standing Order 86. Mr. President, with your permission, I move the motion for the Senate to now proceed to consider and adopt the conference report which had been laid by the chairman of the conference committee yesterday. I so move.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, the same move by the Senate Leader that we accept this document and work on it. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, a motion has been moved and seconded that we do accept and receive and consider the Conference Committee report on tax reform bills 2025 as listed in the order paper. Those in support of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Yes, Chairman, Conference Committee, you may proceed to lay the reports.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Mohammed Sani Musa, representing Niger East Senatorial District. I stand before this hallowed chamber to present the report on the harmonized copies of the tax reform bills. The Nigerian Tax Administration Bill, the differences in Clause 3, jurisdiction of tax authority, House version adopted. Clause 7, issuance of tax identification, House version adopted. Clause 8, use of taxpayers' identification, Senate version adopted. Clause 11, income tax for companies, Senate version adopted. Clause 20, monthly returns of mineral royalty, House version adopted. Clause 22, returns for value-added tax, House version adopted. Clause 24, returns of surcharge, Senate version adopted. Clause 25, returns for virtual asset services providers, Senate version adopted. Clause 29, information to be delivered by bankers and others, House version adopted. Clause 33, accreditation of tax agents, House version adopted. Clause 39, currency of assessment and payment, House version adopted. Clause 41, revision of assessment in case of objection, House version adopted. Clause 45, liability of manager or principal officer, Senate version adopted. Clause 50, payment of tax for companies engaged in upstream petroleum operations and midstream liquefied natural gas operations, House version adopted. Clause 59, power to remove books and documents, House version adopted. Clause 61, power to distrain, Senate version adopted. Clause 64, tax investigation, Senate version adopted. Clause 66, remission of penalty, House version adopted. Clause 68, assignment of tax debts, Senate version adopted. Clause 72, tax clearance certificate, harmonized. Clause 78, power of president to exempt companies from income tax, Senate version adopted. Clause 79, taxation of digital and virtual transactions, Senate version adopted. Clause 80, power of Accountant General to deduct at source, Senate version adopted. Clause 81, distribution of value-added tax revenue, House version adopted. Clause 82, transfer of tax revenue for refund, Senate version adopted. Clause 83, national single window portal, Senate version adopted. Clause 89, establishment and composition of the management board of the state service, House version adopted. Clause 90, appointment of the executive chairman of the state service, House version adopted. Clause 91, functions of the state board, House version adopted. Clause 92, establishment of technical committee of the state board, House version adopted. Clause 94, functions of revenue committee, House version adopted. Clause 95, establishment and composition of state joint revenue committee, House version adopted. Clause 96, functions of the state joint revenue service, House version adopted. Clause 97, exercise of power by relevant tax authority, House version adopted. Clause 100, failure to register, House version adopted. Clause 101, failure to file returns, House version adopted. Clause 102, failure to keep books, House version adopted. Clause 109, penalty for non-compliance by VASP, virtual assets services providers, Senate version adopted. Clause 118, aiding and abetting commission of offenses, House version adopted. Clause 122, false and fictitious claim of VAT refund, Senate version adopted. Clause 123, default in payments of mineral royalties, House version adopted. Clause 136, failure to keep or provide records of chargeable transactions of surcharge, harmonized. Clause 145, conflict with other laws, House version adopted. And clause 147, interpretation, House version adopted. The Nigerian Revenue Service Bill, the difference. Clause 4, functions of the service, House version adopted. Clause 7, composition of the governing board, Senate version adopted. Clause 16, executive chairman of the service, House version adopted. Composition of the executive directors, clause 17. That is what is missing. There's clause 17. Please, clerk. Clause 17. Clause 17. Composition of the executive directors. House version adopted. Clause 22. Fund of the service, House version adopted. Clause 23, expenditure of service, House version adopted. Clause 25, accounts and audits harmonized. Clause 26, annual report harmonized. Clause 30, accountability harmonized. Clause 31, general direction of minister, House version. Clause 36, service of documents, House version. Clause 41, savings and transitional provisions, House version adopted. For the Joint Revenue Board Bill, Clause 4, composition of the board, House version adopted. Clause 5, functions of the board, Senate version adopted. Clause 10, executive secretary of the board, Senate version adopted. Clause 14, fund of the board, House version adopted. Clause 30, funding of the tribunal, Senate version adopted. Clause 31, remuneration and conditions of service of tax appeal commissioners, House version adopted. Clause 44, funds of the office of the tax ombudsman, Senate version adopted. Clause 59, savings and transitional provisions, House version adopted. Clause interpretation, Senate version adopted. Nigerian tax bill. Clause 4, income, profits or gains chargeable to tax, House version adopted. Clause 12, resident individuals, Senate version adopted. Clause 13, employment income, House version adopted. Clause 18, non-resident person engaged in shipping or air transport, House version adopted. Clause 27, ascertainment of total profits of companies, House version adopted. Clause 28, total income of an individual, Senate version adopted. Clause 29, presumptive taxation, Senate version adopted. Clause 30, ascertainment of chargeable income of individuals, House version adopted. Clause 34, chargeable assets, House version adopted. Clause 36, disposal of assets provisions as to consideration, Senate version adopted. Clause 40, expenses incurred for disposal of chargeable assets, House version adopted. Clause 56, rates of tax for companies, Senate version adopted. Clause 57, effective tax rate harmonized. Clause 58, rates of tax for individuals, House version adopted. Clause 59, development levy harmonized. Clause 86, provision relating to the commissioning and abandonment of funds, Senate version adopted. Clause 117, administration of royalties harmonized. Clause 119, unilateral relief of double taxation, Senate version adopted. Clause 123, charge of duties harmonized. Clause 124, manner of denoting duty, Senate version adopted. Clause 25, obligation to stamp, Senate version adopted. Clause 130, conveyance of sale, House version adopted. Clause 133, provisions as to exchange, House version adopted. Clause 134 leases, House version adopted. Clause 136 duty on loan capital, House version adopted. Clause 150 taxable supply by non-residents, Senate version adopted. Clause 155 credit for input tax and remission of VAT, House version adopted. Imposition of surcharge, Clause 158 harmonized. Rate of surcharge, House version adopted. Clause 159 base for surcharge harmonized. Chargeable services and products for surcharge, House version adopted. Chargeable transaction for surcharge, House version adopted. Clause 160 administration of the surcharge harmonized. Clause 161 exemption from surcharge harmonized. Income tax exemption, House version adopted. Production day and qualifying capital expenditure, House version adopted. Publication of economic development incentive certificate, Senate version adopted. Economic development tax credit, House version adopted. Interpretation, House version adopted. Exemption from stamp duties, House version adopted. Exempt supplies, Senate version adopted. Artificial transaction version, House version adopted. Repeals, House version adopted. Consequential amendments, Senate version adopted. Revocation and consequential amendment of subsidiary legislation, Senate version adopted. Clause 200 conflict with others, Senate version adopted. In conclusion, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, the Conference Committee expresses appreciation to the leadership of the Senate and House of Representatives and the entire members of the committee for the opportunity to serve. I so submit.
Will the Senate now adopt the Conference Committee report on the tax reform bills as presented and as explained? Those in support of the adoption of the tax reform bill say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The tax reform bills are hereby adopted. The Chairman, Finance, members of the Conference Committee, I must thank you for your painstaking and detailed work on behalf of the Senate. We are doing it for the sake of future generations and for better approach to taxation in Nigeria. We believe strongly that your work will live after you for posterity so that Nigeria can have a better and globally accepted taxation policies. So thank you for the great job that you have done.
And at the House of Representatives,
the third business of the day is presentation of 4 reports of the Conference Committee, standing in the name of Honorable James Abiodun Faleke. Honorable Faleke is invited to present the reports.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Dear honorable colleagues, I am James Abiodun Faleke. I represent Ikeja Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move that the House do receive the report of the Conference Committee on a bill for an act to provide for the assessment, collection of, and accounting for revenue accruing to the Federation, federal, states, and local governments, prescribe the powers and functions of tax authorities and for related matters. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I rise to move that the House do receive the report of the Conference Committee on a bill for an act to repeal the Federal Inland Revenue Service Establishment Act number 13, 2007, and enact the Nigerian Revenue Service Establishment Bill to establish the Nigerian Revenue Service, charged with the powers of assessment, collection of, and accounting for revenue accruable to the government of the Federation and for related matters. I also move that the House do receive the report of the Conference Committee on a bill for an act to establish Joint Revenue Board, the Tax Appeal Tribunal, and the Office of the Tax Ombudsman for the harmonization, coordination, and settlement of disputes arising from revenue administration in Nigeria and for related matters. Finally, Mr. Speaker and honorable colleagues, I move that the House do receive the report of the Conference Committee on a bill for an act to repeal certain acts on taxation and consolidate the legal frameworks relating to taxation and enact the Nigerian Tax Act to provide for taxation of income, transactions, and instruments for related matters. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I so move.
Right Honorable Speaker, my honorable colleagues, I am Honorable Abdullahi Rashid, member representing the Kunafada Federal Constituency from Gombe State. I rise to second a motion that the House do receive the Conference Committee on the Tax Reform Bill. Mr. Speaker, I so second that the House do receive this report. Thank you, sir.
Those in support of this motion should say aye. Those against should say nay. That is have it. Honorable Falake, please proceed and lay your reports.
Following the laying of the report before the House dissolved into the Committee of a Whole House, presided over by the Deputy Speaker, Honorable Benjamin Carlo, to consider the report of the Conference Committee.
Most distinguished colleagues, the first report to be considered is that of Conference Committee on a bill for an act to provide for the assessment, collection of, and accounting for revenue accruing to the Federation. On behalf of the House, Honorable James Abiodun Falake, to give us the synopsis of that report. The floor is yours, Honorable Falake.
Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues, first let me give an executive summary. On 12 February 2025, the tax reform bills were referred to the House Committee on Finance for passage into law following the transmission to the National Assembly on 3rd October 2024 by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The House Committee on Finance thereafter proceeded on a week-long retreat for a thorough review of the bills and laid same on the 18th of March 2025. However, due to differences in the review outcome of both chambers of the National Assembly, a harmonization conference committee was constituted with the responsibility to ensure a final review of the bills and harmonize any differences for onward transmission to the President for his assent. The harmonization committee conference took place Thursday, 22nd and Friday, 23rd May 2025. Following exhaustive deliberations, the differences in the bills were unanimously resolved, and the chambers are therefore aligned on a single version of all four distinct bills considered during the conference. Some of the key differences resolved include the following: composition of the Service Governing Board. The committee agreed on the appointment of 6 executive directors from the 6 geopolitical zones to be appointed by the President, subject to confirmation of the Senate. The service. Additional income tax exemption. The committee further agreed to grant additional income tax exemptions to certain business activities, such as agricultural businesses and some repatriated incomes, including exchange, respectively. Increase in the threshold of small companies. The committee resolved to amend the threshold of small companies by increasing the qualifying turnover from 50 million to 100 million and fixed assets value of not more than 250 million. This will aid the ease of doing business with minimal administrative burden to emerging companies. Taxation of virtual assets. The growing relevance of technology was recognized by the committee, which informed the need to appropriately tax digital and virtual assets, e.g. cryptocurrency, NFTs, to avoid Nigerians losing out on revenue from these transactions.
Honorable Faleke proceeded to provide details.
Nigeria Tax Administration Bill.
Yeah.
There are 45 differences, and the 45 were resolved. Under the Nigerian Revenue Service Bill, there were 12 differences, and the 12 differences were harmonized and agreed upon. Thank you. Under the Joint Revenue Board bill, there were 9 differences, and all the differences were harmonized and agreed upon by the Conference Committee. Under the Nigeria Tax Bill, there were 46 differences. The entire 46 differences were harmonized and agreed upon as contained in the reports. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I must make this comment that truly the National Assembly has shown a great support for the progress of this great country, from where we are to where we ought to be. This is one of the wheels that national growth, nation building, that we all had expected for a long time now will ride on to take Nigeria to prosperity, to progress. I must commend the effort of the National Assembly to disagree and agree up to this point, because I can assure you this is the last journey on this bill. From now, we are progressing forward. And I must thank Nigerians who supported their representatives. The advice from the governors, we appreciate them. The advice of other stakeholders, we appreciate them for seeing the reason, to move the economic life of this country forward. These are 4 bills that will position Nigeria more strategically when it comes to economic growth than any other bill. So Nigerians, congratulations to you. We are about to cruise into prosperity.
The stage is now set for transmission to Mr. President for assent. It is indeed a new dawn for tax administration in Nigeria. Do well to like, subscribe and follow us on